Welcome back to Desk Careers. I'm so excited to bring another incredible guest. Today we are meeting with Nivarti Jayaram, who is the Chief Data Officer for Associate General Global Solution Center. Welcome, Nivarti.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. It's great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
It's great to have you here with me. I'm really interested in your career and the books that we see right behind you. But before we go into what you're doing currently, I thought you could take us back to a younger time when you were interested in aeronautical engineering as an adolescent. When did that interest kick in for you? Did you have a role model? Was it a teacher? How did you know that specifically aeronautical engineering was what you were interested in?
Yeah, it was one of our physics teacher to start with. So in the school, I remember maybe at class 6 or 7. So he used to teach us physics specifically, and he used to share lots of stories about aeronautical engineering and how it can help us go to moon. That was the kind of dream it started with. Okay, can you become a kind of specialist or aeronautics person so that you can land on moon? That's the kind of dream I started with. Yeah, but still, if I get a chance to go to moon, why not?
So it was an interest in aerospace, and it was an interest in going to the moon. Did you have any role models in your life at home or around in your social circle?
At that time, my brother was in a DRDO, Defense Research Development Organization. So he was definitely one of the inspirations to start off with. And that is what took me to Air Force, because I couldn't get through to the engineering part yet. So I took an alternate path to get into Indian Air Force at a quite young age, probably 18 and a half I was when I started my journey of being with Indian Armed Forces.
Amazing. Okay, let's go into some of your career journey highlights. You served as an air warrior for 23 years. What is that? What is an air warrior?
So Air Warrior is an Indian Air Force person who has served the country. That's what we call them, as Air Warriors. And I've served Indian Air Force for 23 years before moving into corporate world. So close to 23 years, I would say, probably 3 months less.
And tell us a little bit about the United Nations peacekeeping mission that you worked with.
Yes, yeah. So it was a proud privilege, I would say, and honor to represent Indian Armed Forces as part of United Nations peacekeeping mission in Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo. At that time, they were going through a lot of turbulence, and we had a host of countries operating there as peacekeepers, really helping the people of Congo and also the government of Congo to establish a governance and more democratic government there.
Okay, now let's talk about the transition. You went from 23 years working as an air warrior, and then you transitioned into the corporate world. What was that transition like for you? Did you find that the two worlds were very different, or did you find the skills that you learned as an air warrior really served and became very resourceful for you in that transition?
It's an yes and no. Yes, that from a mindset point of view, you had to change quite a bit, because the kind of operating environment when you are in a military service is quite different versus when you are operating in a corporate world. But when you talk about the way you deal with situations, the capability, competencies you build over time in managing uncertainties or complexities in the system, and be able to motivate and inspire and drive people, I think you are better served with those trends that you have built over the years being in military. So from a learning and transition perspective, I had to change my mindset quite a bit, because in military you are more being directed, right? So you have that set of guidelines to operate within, and it's very strict. But when you come to corporate, you are more on your own, based on what you are expected to do, right? And the way you operate and the culture you operate in is also quite different. So suddenly it was like in a different, if you bring a fish from a pond and put that in an aquarium, for example, it takes a lot of time and people can't just move. You can't just move fish from a fresh water to an aquarium or other way around, right? You have to make it seamlessly transition, make it acquaint with the new environment. And definitely it took a lot of unlearning, and that's where my first book came from as well, to say that yes, I had to forgo of many things, which is still happening because I still have certain mindset that has been built over that 23 years. Even though now I have been spent 10 years in corporate world, I still carry certain mindset and those operating mechanisms which are so strong. So it's lot of unlearning and taking away things and understanding what are those trends which I can utilize to make life better for myself and also to people whom I work with. So that's why I
Incredible.
said it's a yes or no.
So, as a practitioner, what I come across very often, both working with young people and also meeting professionals, is when a long career journey comes to a finish, sort of like yours, there's that gap and in between who am I now and what is my identity and how will I keep going. Did you find that after 23 years that you had to really sit and ask yourself some deep questions about, what do I really want now moving forward? How did you know that corporate was what you wanted to be doing after you retired as an air warrior?
Yeah, I think even 2 years before, I spent almost 2 years preparing to become what I wanted to become. Right. So, and it took me that journey of that 2 years, a lot of experimentation to really get into corporate. It was not that easy because at that point of time, let's take it was almost more than a decade back. Even the veterans were not really recognized so prominently. Now you have special drives, so people are really looking for them, understanding and all that. But that time it was entirely new, as probably one of the first few people who got into corporate. So, firstly, understanding what it takes to get into a corporate world, right? So that was one of the most important things. So I went to lots of interviews and failed really to understand the terminologies that you want to use, how you represent your experience from a military background to the corporate world, right? What is the corporate mindset? What is how they want you to be, right? How to display your experience, your learnings, and what strengths you bring to the table. So it definitely takes a lot of preparation, a lot of willingness to fail, right? Willingness to experiment, and that's what is my second book as well. That yes, irrespective of all the failures you might have, it's all about building that resilience and motivation to keep coming back, right? So and it takes a lot of preparation. I would say it took me almost 2 years because I attended my first 4 or 5 interviews for being a project manager. That's the role I started with in the corporate world. And initially they told me you have everything but you don't have a PMP, because that's what at least they wanted in a corporate world. I didn't know what PMP was. I heard it in first corporate interview. I went back to the ground, my drawing board, and understood what PMI is, go through, spent 6 months to prepare, got my PMP, went back to the interviews again to say, yes, I now have PMP, and how I represent my interview or my experience being a PMP, it changed how I present myself to the interviewer as well in terms of their experience. So it took a while, and understanding what it takes for the corporate. I think that's the great thing which is required when you are moving, even from, let's say, even in the corporate. Let's say I moved from service industry to banking. How banking people look at a person coming from service industry is entirely different. Today, being in banking for 8 years, if I want to move to healthcare, suddenly you will be a novice there because you don't know how systems operate within healthcare, correct? So how you make your experience and represent it to the best needs of that particular world, what strengths you bring to the table, which can be useful for them, and what impact can you create, even though you are a novice in that particular system, right? So, and what you're looking for, I think that's the most important thing.
Really insightful. Okay, let's talk about these two incredible titles behind you. Unlearning and you too can bounce back. They're incredible titles. You've mentioned them here and there in our conversation, but when did you know that you wanted to be an author?
I lots of discussions I used to have, people ask this question: how have you really transitioned from military to corporate? Because as I said, not many people were there when I joined, and especially being in the corporate world, I would say a little successful for last 10 plus years now. That question always used to come, and when I reflect, what I did most of the time was completely unlearn rather than learning something new, because there were a lot of habits, as I said, that are built into the system. There is a mindset that is built, the way you think, you operate. There is a certain way you communicate because of the environment you are brought up in for that long. And for you to succeed in corporate, you have to change all that. So for that, you have to let go of many things while you are learning new things. And that is where that came. And when I started with my coaching journey, I've been a professional coach for 7 8 years now. So when I started with coaching as well, that again got reinforced. Again, being a coach is all about being a child. How can you be that child without any judgment, without any prejudice, without any preconceived notions? How you can be so curious without any fear? If you talk to a child, they will probably ask you questions which you can never dream of, right? So how can you, that inquisitiveness can be built into you? So that is what the first book was all about, and what coaches can unlearn to be really effective in the coaching conversations. That's the first book. Yeah. And the second book is all about, again, as I said, resilience. When I see today's world, last 2 years has been difficult for a lot of people, right? So people have lost jobs, people have lost businesses, lost their living. But a lot of people don't know how to monetize themselves, how you really need to be building that resilience, building that alternate mindset to be able to bounce back consistently. And the second book talks about that. When you have disruption in your life, and disruption is going to be the new normal, already it is a new normal. By the time you feel comfortable with one variant of COVID, you are getting another entirely different variant. So we are being disrupted every day. How you can really look at building an alternate source for you to sustain, and what qualities you need to build as an individual to be able to bounce back successfully from those failures that you might face in life, rather than losing yourself, right? So it's all about balancing our needs with our wants, and be able to sustain longer and still build something which can give you that additional support that is required for you to sustain it much more longer and continue to excel. So that is the second book, because I see a lot of posts, a lot of people really in dire states in their life. So this is something I would possibly think will help people. It's not yet published, it's almost in the final stages, but it is meant for that purpose. And it's all about how I have gone through that life. Not everything I have done has been successful. Even in the last 2 years, I have gone through ups and downs. So what has helped me, how my mindset has been. So that's about the second.
Wonderful. Nivarti, if you could leave a young person with one strategy or one tip that will take them through today to their future career, what would that be?
I think, can you be the disruptor than being disrupted? Right. So think about what is that you can disrupt, what is the problem you can solve, than thinking about what problems you have in life and worrying about them. If you have a problem, find a solution and disrupt the whole world with that solution. Don't worry about the problem. Focus on finding solution for the problem. That way, I think we become disruptors, and that's what makes us successful in this world at this time.
That's an incredible tip. Be the disruptor. I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We were speaking with Nivarti Jayaram, who is the Chief Data Officer at Associate General Global Solution Center and the author of 2 incredible books on learning the secret to better coaching engagements, and you too can bounce back. We'll see you all at our next Desk Careers Digital Spotlight.